Change colour. It's just, I don't know, I suppose I'm lucky that way.
So obviously for our listeners, don't know what we're talking about. Chris looks as if he's wearing makeup, serious makeup.
Well, I do anyway for the radio, but that's another story. That's another story. Anyway, you good? It's been 2 weeks. You had a good couple of weeks.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's been pretty intense with the Ukraine.
Oh my goodness me! Yeah. Where do we start with that one?
Whilst I think of it, I'm going to the vigil tonight in Newbury at 6:30 in the marketplace.
Okay.
And if anybody would like a lift, I'm very happy to take.
So what's happening there then? So
they're giving candles to everybody. There'll probably be some people talking, but it's just a show of support, really. Yeah,
and that's all. Unfortunately, that's all. Our hands are tied, really, aren't they? Apart from offering support to people that are having to, sort of move across to Poland or wherever, and normal thing, clothes, food, etc., etc. But apart from that, there's very little we can do. It's really an awful situation.
Well, yes, I mean it's all in the hands of the the sanctions. I mean, I don't know if Brian talked about it, but he wrote a really interesting article last night about the whole history and background and why Putin's doing what he's doing, and how it shouldn't have really been a surprise to anybody that this was going to happen. So, but this whole thing, some people are calling for no-fly zones over the Ukraine, but actually that would trigger a world war.
Well, we'd all be in trouble.
Yeah.
Big trouble. So I don't think that's a possibility. But, I mean, I'm just hoping that, there's a lot of news out there now, and at some point people are going to realise what they're being told is not necessarily the truth. It's not going to be for long before that's going to happen, and people are going to realise.
Merrick's nodding here. Merrick's family is from the Czech Republic, is a bit closer to your family.
No, definitely. I mean, because when you break it down, it's not that far a distance, because you kind of have Ukraine, Slovakia, then the Czech Republic. So I think, definitely, as I was telling you off the air, Penny, Central, Eastern Europe, I think, are definitely getting a bit nervous now. But like you said, our hands are tied. You just kind of have to sit and wait and hope the people up top can make their mind up.
The hope is that the sanctions will start to bite. But what Putin's, since he annexed Crimea, he's been preparing, he's been kind of, ring fencing his assets so that he could weather sanctions, in the event of an invasion, and it's taken him 8 years, and now he feels ready that he can weather the sanctions. And I don't know much about the oligarchs, but he's got this kind of mafia around him of people who've kind of hidden his money. I didn't realise he's meant to be one of the most wealthy individuals on the planet.
Yeah, it's the irony.
But it's what will actually touch him, on a power basis. But it's incredible. I mean, my aunt was saying it just reminds her of the Second World War. She's 87. She remembers it. But now with social media and internet and everything, you feel like you're there. It's so visceral. You feel part of it. I think about it when I'm in bed at night. Probably even more so than what happened in the Second World War. And hopefully with all the sanctions and all the sports people and all the musicians, all the Russians who are being, basically shut out of the rest of the world now, you would have to hope that will have an impact, that it isn't just military might anymore.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because coming from a British Czech household, the Munich Agreement and Sudetenland crisis in the Second World War is always a contentious topic. And I consider myself a bit of a history buff, so I have sort of noted parallels between the two. Like, it is kind of like history repeating itself, in a sense that you have this quite dominant imperial power looking to expand, and obviously it started with Crimea in 2014. They're getting a bit like the Sudetenland, because that was always a territory in what was Czechoslovakia that was historically arguably belonged to Germany, but there's always been disputes about it, and a lot of Germans lived there. And that was Hitler's argument for moving in there. So it's sort of interesting hearing today, views, because people are like, but what can we do about, a small part of Ukraine or Ukraine? We're so far away. But it's like, but that's what people were thinking back in the 1940s, and look what happened there. So it does sort of ground you. I know you can't compare too heavily, but there are definitely similarities there.
And I think you can put pressure on your own politicians, and that's why demonstrations and writing to the Ukraine Institute says, write to your MP, put pressure on the British politicians to, you know, do what they can. I mean, we individually are limited to exercising our democratic power in our own country and sending what resources we can afford to do as individuals.
But surely it's only a matter of time, because there are a lot of Russian people that live abroad, and they will know what's going on. They have relatives at home, and they say, look, you're not being told the truth here. There's a lot of people that are professional, say sports people, other people that work professionally abroad, who again are going to get back to people whether Putin likes it or not. He can shut down as many TV stations or radio stations he wants, but you know, word will get back that you know you're not being told the truth. And will that be a time when people stand up and say enough is enough, and he's going to have to stop?
But they're
I don't
all
know.
terrified of him. I mean, I think the
whole world's terrified of him.
but to be a Russian citizen, to stand up to him is life-threatening, I would think.
It's a prison sentence automatically.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm just wondering if there's something going on in the background where somebody's going to take a pot shot.
Well, it did cross my mind, but it would have to be someone from Russia. Anywhere else, it would obviously be a big problem. It would have to be someone from within.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, to be perfectly honest. I wouldn't be surprised. He's not going to be safe for 100, you know, sort of 24/7. I wouldn't have thought. Anyway.
Nice light one to start.
Yes.
Yeah, nice light one.
You did ask, Chris.
I did. No, that's fine. Carry
But
on.
the other thing we have been doing much closer to home is planting plants in the river.
Yes.
Action for the River Kennet. We had about 20 of their volunteers in our garden last Friday, and luckily it was a sunny day, and we planted nearly 2,000 flowers in the riverbank. So these are flag irises, purple loosestrife and marsh marigolds. So these are 3 species of plants that need wet conditions.
Okay.
So we planted them in the edge of the riverbank.
Yeah.
In some places we planted them actually right under the water in the stream.
Okay.
And then they'll eventually pop their heads out. So that helps create a habitat for the bank, you know, for the wildlife. Because some of the banks are just concrete walls.
Yeah, exactly.
But it'll be good for the bees as well.
Good.
So,
that's good news. Good.
Yeah. So, moving to Merrick. So, Merrick, thank you so much for coming over today from
thank you for having me.
sunny Thatcham. I can't remember how we first met. I think you sent me an email a few months last year.
Sort of last autumn, wasn't it?
But I'm very interested in what you have to say, because when I was your age, I was in the film industry, and I'm interested to how people make this journey and what the conditions are like now. How kind of secure is this as a career in this day and age? So can you just tell us your journey from school, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose one of my main inspirations would be in Czech Republic, where most of my family come from on my mum's side. My uncle's a documentary filmmaker. So him and his wife are like a creative duo, and they produce documentary series for CT1, which is like the equivalent of BBC here. So that's always kind of been in my life. And to be honest, when I was at school age and even teens, like there wasn't much of a film background to speak of. I think looking back as a child, I did quite enjoy at home, like forcing my brother to be in plays I'd written. And I'd direct it for the family, even though I didn't know that's what it was. I would just put it on, boss people around. So I think very early on there was
the genes.
Exactly. Like looking back, I think there was the signs. But then, so I'd always been interested in art and drama and things like that. But then that kind of went dormant, and it was actually sort of getting into sixth form at Kennet School in Thatcham. I had some friends who were doing their BTEC media course. And I was really fascinated with what they were doing, because they only had a small studio, but they were doing everything from, you know, sound, recording, editing, and I really wanted to know more. So I actually made quite a last minute decision, because I knew I was going to study history at uni, and very late on in the process I was like, oh, actually I would like to find a course that combines film and history. So that actually did rule out some of my choices, because some of the unis that were my top choices only did history. So it was a bit of a last minute dash to try and find one that did. And luckily I ended up at the University of Southampton, which is a very good uni, and not too far either, washing distance as we like to call it. My mum will hate me for that one. But yeah, no, so I ended up there, and I should add that was a film studies course, so that was more academic. Looking back in some ways, I think, to be perfectly honest, I had no idea what I was doing. And no one from my English family, at least, they didn't have any kind of media background. So when we were looking for film, we weren't quite sure of the differences between,
studying film and making film.
Exactly, and film school even, which, is completely different. So I sort of did that, but I really enjoyed it looking back. And obviously it allowed me to do history as well, which was one of my main passions. But I did get very involved in filmmaking societies, because I definitely had that hunger there. I was, surrounded by people in my sort of age band who were all people from different walks of life, wanted to make stuff. So I just had to. I knew I had to make something, and I did, for better or worse.
So you came out of Southampton then with a kind of academic degree, but
That's right.
also with some experience under your belt of filming, editing,
editing,
producing short films,
and
fiction or non-fiction.
Fiction mainly, short films. I mean, I'd probably on other people's projects in one capacity or another. I'd worked on maybe about 20-30 films, and I did about 3 off my own. Which I very much squirm to look at nowadays. I look back and I'm like, these are absolutely abysmal. I deleted them off YouTube and everything, which is hypocritical of me, because I even tell my students, like, don't be embarrassed of your early work. We learn from it, blah, blah, blah. But then I'm like...
So you just taught yourself in a student environment how to make a film. What crew roles? Did you do a bit of everything?
Absolutely, yeah, no, it was very much self-taught. I mean, we had a very good society called Wessex Films. I think sadly it's dissolved now, but that had been going since the 60s. And we had some older students there who were sort of managing it, who had gone to film schools elsewhere in Europe. And they were very good teachers, and I'd basically learnt from that a lot and just kind of throwing myself in at the deep end. I mean, that's definitely one piece of advice I'd always give aspiring filmmakers, is to keep open-minded, like try every aspect of filmmaking before you. So even if you know you want to be a writer, try sound recording, try working as a second AC, which is the clapperboard, camera operating. So I certainly tried everything. I did a lot of sound on people's films, and yet sound isn't something I want to do, but I have a fair bit of experience in that as well.
But there is, okay, let's just explain a little bit about what the roles are in making a film, because there are some that you need a bit of training. You can't just pick a camera up.
No, certainly not. So at a core level, I suppose, what you call the skeleton crew, so the most minimal crew you need is sound recordist. Sometimes they will be a boom operator, so people have probably seen pictures of someone who there with headphones holding a funny stick with the mic on the end, so they direction where the sound is pointed, which feeds back to the sound recorder. Sometimes that can just be one person, which as a student you usually are, so you're absolutely tangled in leads and all sorts, which is always fun, especially on a hot day. Then you have the camera operator, and like you say, that one does take a lot of work, learning how the exposure triangle works and settings on different cameras. So it's very much you just have to get stuck in and ideally shadow someone beforehand. So even on a student film, I think I never ran in just thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna help film on someone's short. I would rather find out who the DP is, the director of photography, and ask if I could just sort of follow them and be their camera assistant, so like passing them lenses and things like that, because you can pick up quite a lot that way. And I suppose and obviously director as well. No one really knows what a director does. I mean, I think actually director comes from the Latin word for dictator, I think I'm right in saying. So you do get some people who take that quite literally. So yeah, that's an ambiguous one. But then lastly, I think you have the clapper loader, which is the person with the slate board, and they read out what the shot is, what the take is, etc. And they clap the end sticks, because sound and video is recorded separately. So when you hear that kind of sharp clap in the edit, that tells the editor where to sync up. I can speak from personal experience. When you're shooting on a no-budget student shot in someone's house and the tension's rising, it can be tempting to skip that step. I would not recommend that. Even if, at the very least, you click your fingers in front of the camera, because it can make... I mean,
The editor will thank you.
Yeah, they will look at it and think, well, how am I supposed to sync this up? And you end up with audio that's out of sync. Because an audience will put up with slightly dodgy video. They will not put up with bad sound. That is automatically, they will walk out.
It's interesting that, isn't it? You take the sound for granted. When we do film nights in the East Garston Village Hall, and the sound is a problem because it's there's all hard surfaces. And you can really tell the production value of the films according to how good the sound is in a bad
100%.
Situation like that. So we'll come back to roles. What I ended up doing was teach myself how to be a script supervisor, which I think is the most important person on set, but we'll come back to that. So you left uni, and what have you been doing since? And how, so tell us what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. So leaving uni, that was very much where the fun began, ironically. So no, I think, to be honest, I mean, I know a lot of people probably say this in retrospect, but I probably wasn't in some ways as forward-thinking as I could have been at uni. And I think that's very much still the case, that I didn't really understand the industry at that point and how it was kind of made up. I think, sounds very cringe, but I had this romantic vision of like kind of Sunset Boulevard. I'd run to the gates of Pinewood with a script and they'd let me in, which isn't how it works. So yeah, no, it was a bit of a learning curve, but I was quite proactive. I attended a lot of different courses and training days, and I was in contact with...
And how did you find out about these courses?
Often social media, so good places to follow, Royal Television Society, British Film Institute.
Royal Television Society?
The RTS, yeah.
Okay.
I think they still hold a lot of training days up in Birmingham, so a bit of a trek.
Are these free or are they expensive?
They're usually paid for, but they're affordable. Okay. They're affordable, and they're really good as well, because it's kind of like industry trade fairs. So they have different people appear from like the BBC or Channel 4, and they have like a stall set up, and you can sort of speak to them, and also training opportunities. I mean, especially these days, I mean, it can be looked at as a good thing and a bad thing, because it's like, as when you're starting out, it's overwhelming to know where to look. But there's so many different opportunities out there. Things like Screen Skills, they offer like apprenticeships and training schemes for people, and that's actually like on set. So you'll become a trainee for them, and they'll put you on a set and kind of mentor you for, I think it can depend, it could be 3 to 6 months, and eventually you're on your own kind of thing.
So I think Screen Skills are good because there is a risk that any media organisation, whether it's a glossy magazine or a TV, it's only middle-class people who can afford to work for free can get their toe in the door.
Right.
Because they offer these internships with no salary.
Right.
And so that was how I got in, to be brutally honest.
Same here.
But screenskills.com, they are a charity, basically, that broadens the access to allow opportunities for anybody, for any walk of life, to get into the media business.
Right, okay.
Yeah, because I think it was about 10 years ago. I mean, it's not completely resolved, and to be honest, I'd say it's better here than it is in the US. But I think about 10 years ago, about 10 years ago in this country, there was something called the TV Rap campaign. And that was basically a load of first assistant directors and production managers who kind of stepped up and were like, this is enough. Because there was a lot of exploitation going on in film and TV, like you say, people working for free or long hours culture, which is still an issue today as well. And so they signed a petition, and I think BECTU, which is basically the film and TV industry union, put some measures in place to sort of try and resolve that. Unfortunately, like you say, you still find a lot of reputable companies, actually. It sometimes surprises me, who offer exciting internship opportunities, and you only find out very late on there's no salary involved.
Well, I think internship usually means it's not paid.
That's the thing, it's very difficult. But it can be a lot of big companies as well, and I think there was even a scandal a couple of years ago where I think it was the BBC for Wimbledon wanted people to basically turn up and film it, but they were advertising it as like a training opportunity, but a lot of people called them out saying, no, you're actually after like camera operators, so you need to pay them as such, and that's the BBC. So
the trouble is, I mean, if I was them, I would do. If you've got a lot of people knocking on your door prepared to work for free, it's hard not to take advantage of it. Yeah. But it does make it really skewed. Yeah. Who can get into that business?
No, definitely. This is always something I get quite heated about, and I've written about it in the past as well. Because you do get some people who are firmly in the camp that, no, you should never work for free, it's exploitation full stop. But then there is a case, like personally, I did start out doing an unpaid internship at a theatre company in Soho, which was a great opportunity for me. It was really cool because I'd only been out of uni 2 months looking for work, and then I landed this, which took me to about Christmas 2019. So it was a great opportunity, but that was unpaid.
And what were you doing there?
I was a production assistant, so that was office-based. So I was helping a lot of shows they had touring across the UK and in London as well. So it was just the daily kind of management of them, you know, booking rooms, organising paperwork. But it was more fun than that because I did get to run on press nights and things like that. So you did meet a lot of interesting people. But nowadays I'm sort of firmly in the camp that I will work for free if it's with like a friend, helping out on a friend's film. I'll always work for free, you know, if cover expenses or something like that. I think it's just common sense and kind of know, you have to know your own worth and draw the line. Like if you feel someone's taking the mick, then don't. Because I've had people approach me who I've worked with before and they kind of like ask for, oh yeah, you know, come work somewhere up north for like a week on this. But no expenses, sorry, nothing in the budget for that. And you're just kind of like, well, no, come on.
Yeah.
You do have to be reasonable. And I think it's just taking each case as it comes. So I think there is an argument for working for free because it can get you on different amateur sets and learning skills.
Well, look,
but
if you use... So when I basically found myself, I happened to be living in New York, but that's not so relevant. And I had been working for 2 years in a desk job at a TV station doing acquisitions and co-productions. And I was bored and I wanted to get out and play. And I thought, well, I either have to go to film school or I have to support myself whilst I work for free and learn on the job. And I chose that latter route. And I thought, well, what job can I teach myself? Basically reading a book. And I did some research, and script supervising was the only thing I reckoned I could do. But it is a really difficult job. So what you are is the editor's representative on set. So you have to make sure that the director and the cameraman know what they're doing, so they get all the camera angles right. So the editors can... You've got a scene that's shot from, you know, more than one angle. Like, say you and me are talking, Chris. If Merrick's the camera, you're on the left. If Merrick moves over there behind us, you're on the right.
Yeah, right.
And that's called a jump cut. And the editor can't edit that together. When you're on the set, you have to be having those mathematical decisions going on in your mind. And the other thing you have to do is continuity. And so you have to tell the art department, the props, the makeup and wardrobe, if they've made a mistake. And in those days, I had a Polaroid camera, and you're recording everything. And then you have to say, oh, because you may shoot half a scene one day and the other half of it a couple of weeks later, and somebody's got to be able to match up the continuity, and that's you. And it's the only one-person department.
You must have had big shoulders for that role,
Yeah,
I can imagine,
It evolved from director's secretary, so it's predominantly a female role. And it's a lot of work. Anyway, you do learn a lot about filmmaking. And I can't remember why I started telling you this, but...
Well, it's because you said that, you know...
But that justified working for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I found a production company that had no money. They were doing an indie film. I took it, and I knew that if I didn't screw up too badly, they would bring me back on the next time that they had a budget. And that is what happened. Yeah.
I think there is a place for it, yeah, definitely. It's kind of just knowing your own worth and knowing when to eventually take the dive and draw the line. Sort of like, right, I will only work for free if it's a friend's job, but otherwise, you know, I need to prioritise paid work. Because like you said, there is disparity that, sadly, even today, and I noticed it a lot in theatre, that is generally white middle-class people who can get their foot in the door, because people from sort of non-privileged backgrounds, it's kind of shut them out, and it's wrong, it's not right. And there are a lot of initiatives to kind of improve that these days, which is nice to see.
So there was an article in The Guardian recently saying that there's a shortage of employees in booming Amazon, Netflix. England's got fantastic reputation for production, but they're running out of crew, basically. Is this true? Is this your experience?
It's quite interesting you sent me that, because that actually reminded me 2 years ago when I was speaking with first assistant director. They were kind of telling me...
Okay, let's just say what an assistant director does.
Sorry, yes, first assistant director.
They're like the policeman on set, was
the way
my
I
impression.
always, yeah, kind of. The way I always pitch it to the children I teach is kind of like, if the director's the captain, the first assistant director is their first mate. So people generally have a vision of the director being up and close and personal with the crew and the cast and moving them around, which some directors are, it depends. But often the director will be huddled away behind a monitor somewhere, just staring at the screen, because ultimately that's what we see. And they will give their directions to the first AD, who will kind of direct on their behalf. So some people are quite surprised to learn that it can usually be the first assistant director who calls action and cut. And sometimes a director will get up, but you do get some directors who just sit behind the monitor. So first AD is a very intense role, and often there's the kind of stereotype they become the very shouty person on set, because they're telling everyone to shut up and move around and all of that. So I can only mainly really talk about short form content, because that's where my experience lies. So commercials, music videos and the such. But yeah, no, I was talking with this first AD who worked more in film, and this was a couple of years ago as well, and he's saying that it's really surprising that a lot of the skilled jobs in film, so gaffers who are lighting department, art department who build the sets and props, etc., people don't realise there's a lot of transferable skills there. So like the film industry and TV industry is hungry for people like carpenters and electricians and even like producer wise, like anyone who has a background in like project management or admin, you would be eligible for that. And I think often people kind of see the film industry, which it is in some ways, as kind of this closed circle, but if you have these professions, you could probably pursue a career there. Like the industry is hungry for that. But on that list as well, there was many different roles, and I think unfortunately COVID has a large part to do with that, obviously, because if the pandemic taught us anything, it was that you can't just have one source of income, which, I mean, as we found out with the arts, how we were valued, it was very much kind of shut out, and I think a lot of people had to turn away, sadly.
So does this first AD, was he corroborating the concern that there aren't enough people?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think so. And you still do see it today. I mean, commercial-wise, I don't know, I think there's a lot of us runners, because, I mean, running production assistant, that is how you get on set. But yeah, certainly skilled jobs, I think there always is a strong demand for people like that.
Because so I mean, to be a carpenter on a film set, to make let's say you're filming in a house and the carpenter has to build the set, it has to be so much better built than a normal house, because all the walls need to be able to be taken out to put a camera in. So the technological requirements is higher probably than in real life.
Right.
And, you know, all the makeup and the prosthetics, it's really exciting, really creative. But the hours, as you say, are really unpredictable. You could be night shooting for weeks.
Absolutely.
Long hours. I mean, I've filmed through the night many, many times, and it's hard to have a private life.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to have a relationship, you're better off having, it's a bit like lawyers, or, you know, anybody who's got quite a specialised career. I think it's better to date somebody in the same career as you, because a normal person, if you're on a feature film, you disappear for 2 months.
Yeah,
you
that's
almost
true.
Literally disappear. I mean, I've shot in, you know, South America and stuff, and, you know, before the days of Facebook, and your parents are probably thinking, are we ever going to see her again?
I mean, there's definitely pros and cons with both formats, like you say. I mean, speaking primarily about commercials, it's very much short-term chaos, but then it's over.
Yeah.
So you might be on a job for a week, which would be intense, you know, it could be 12, 14-hour days, but then it's kind of over and it's a faster turnaround.
Yeah.
But like you say, with film, you might have to kind of be married to that particular job for 6 days a week, 14-hour days for like 2 months.
Yeah.
And you won't see your friends, you'll be on set more than at home.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I personally haven't actually got on a professional film set yet, and I would love to have that experience. And I've kind of accepted that would have to be the case. But yeah, no, I can imagine it's certainly difficult.
I mean, you kind of create a new family. Most people I work with were lovely. They were all slightly, something messed up with them in their personal lives. Everybody was kind of escaping from something, I felt, on some level. I certainly was. But all lovely people to be around. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest criteria to getting jobs in the industry, is being a cool person to be around.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter how good you are at your job. If you're an idiot, on any level, you won't be tolerated, will you? Is that...
No, 100%. I mean, I definitely had this vision when I first started working as a production assistant, because I've been kind of told how joining any kind of set as a runner is very military-like, because there's a lot of the hierarchy from the film industry is kind of incorporated from the military, with your, kind of director as your general, the ADs as your lieutenants, and the runners as the privates. So you're the kind of the grunt. And I did go in with that preconception, thinking, oh my God, if I mess up even slightly, I'll be shouted at and thrown off set, etc. But no, actually, I found the opposite. Everyone I've worked with has been very pleasant, and every set I've been on, to be fair, I've never had any problems. Everyone's always really civil.
You're lucky. I've worked with some,
Yeah, maybe I've got that to come. Who knows?
And it's interesting to talk about commercials, because in my day, everybody took commercial work to basically subsidise the creative stuff. So you'd work on a 30-second commercial, get paid stupid money, and then that would support you whilst you did a kind of nice touchy-feely, something afterwards. But I thought, I just one occasion sticks in my mind with working with a director who I thought was the nicest director I've worked with, and one of the poor crew had an epileptic fit on the set.
Oh, wow.
And the director virtually walked over this guy and said, "Oh, next time you want to kick your shoes off, why don't you undo your laces first?" I couldn't believe it.
Oh my God.
It was just awful.
Oh dear.
But and commercials the budgets are just
it's insane.
6 figures. It's just.
Why don't you stick with that?
Well, but it was soul destroying.
Was it?
What
commercials do you work on?
Oh gosh, I can't remember now. But
these were broadcast on what?
This was in the States.
Oh, so American. Commercials everywhere.
Yeah, and there's a lot of corporate video work as well. But, I remember working in a warehouse in a town in Connecticut, and Connecticut has got this reputation of being really upmarket county or state. It had some of the poorest counties in America next to some of the most expensive, wealthy counties. And we were working in a warehouse, and we had to shoot at night because the warehouse was operating during the day. And my job, I was a runner, was to drive to the train station and pick the crew, the talent up, from the train station to the set. And I remember at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, on my trip, stopping at a red light, and this cop car came up to me. I thought, God, what have I done wrong? He said, "What the hell are you doing stopping at these lights?" I said, "They're red." He said, "Do not stop."
Oh, wow. Yeah, and even things like you said, like using car for your work, that's something that's even can be just quite taken for granted, but like you do need business insurance. If you're going to take any kind of kit or people, you need to look after yourself, because if anything, if I'm carrying a load of like radios of thousands of pounds of kit in my boot and I have a crash, I could be potentially liable for that. So there's these little things that you do have to just think about, because if someone's like, "Oh, can you carry this?" You're like, "Yeah, sure, of course," but you don't think like this, and you kind of, these are the things you just kind of pick up on the job as well. But like you say, commercials, I think it can depend. Some people look at that as a gateway into other stuff. And I know directors like that.
It's meeting people. You make friends with other people on the crew. I'll just tell you another car story. One job I had when I was living in New York, I got a job, assistant producing or something, a TV series shot in Italy. Oh my God, what a dream job this was. We had like 2 weeks driving around Italy and filming how pigs found truffles and how Parmesan cheese was made. It was just absolutely the dream job. Except the talent we were working with was called Jeff Smith, the Frugal Gourmet. So this is, imagine somebody as famous as Jamie Oliver. Okay, literally. And he was this big, white-bearded, avuncular guy. He was a retired priest. Middle America absolutely loved him. What Middle America didn't realise was that he was a gay, alcoholic paedophile.
Oh, my Lord.
I kid you not. And in fact, before he died, I remember filming in a Polish restaurant in New York with him, and this lovely lady came up and said, Jeff, I love you, but I just want to say you're kind of dumpling. She kind of had a little bit of feedback. Oh boy, he didn't like that at all. But my job when we were touring Italy was to drive the minibus of the crew, and one particular day we had to get them to the airport in Bologna or somewhere, and we were going through the Alps. and it was a really bright day, and it was like a pupil dilation test. You were going through these tunnels, and you're really, really dark, and then you'd come out into this bright sunshine, and it was a 2-lane highway, and the other vehicles on the road seemed to be either Porsches or farm trucks, you know, and you could see as they'd gone round a corner too fast, there was a load of pottery on the side of the, you know, and every time I'd kind of go to overtake one of these things, I'd move into the overtaking lane, there'd be a bloody Porsche behind me. I've never been so stressed driving in my life.
I was going to say, phoning up the company, you hit a what?
Yeah.
I mean, that puts things in perspective, because I thought driving around London was stressful, but that certainly sounds a bit more.
And when we were going through Milan, I was so frightened of losing. Jeff was in a chauffeur-driven Mercedes in front, and I had the crew in the minibus. Why they gave me the responsibility to drive this minibus, I'm not sure. But I jumped to light because I was so frightened of losing him and getting lost in Milan. I got really told off for that.
Okay. You wouldn't have got into trouble if you're in Connecticut. No,
the policeman would have told me to
jump the light.
Funny, just going back a bit, I mean, put it this way, I was once told by an AD, and this resonated with me just because it was kind of bittersweet but kind of hilarious as well. He said, put it this way, on commercials you'll find people showing you pictures of their kids. On feature films you'll have people moaning about their ex-wife. And I was like, okay. Yeah.
That's a really good insight into what kind of private life you can have.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because commercial shoots tend to be more controlled.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. If you've got an indie feature film, you've got your talent for a certain amount of time, you've got your location for a certain amount of time, and you cannot let the crew go until you've got the shot in the can. Because that's your only chance. Yeah. Isn't it?
I mean, that's one thing, sort of reading up on around that Guardian article you sent, actually, that was quite interesting to read, that they said primarily with TV, obviously, like you said earlier, UK's having this production boom at the minute. The kind of streaming services are at war with the studios, so you've had new studios built in Winnersh, Shinfield, obviously we have Arborfield as well. So there's a lot of competition there, but now you kind of get what's known in TV as job hopping, where because of this skill shortage and different disputes with money and hours, you'll get crew on a TV shoot who they will actually leave mid-shoot to go on another shoot because it's better paid.
Like the building industry.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So there's it's kind of then creating this wage inflation, because obviously all companies are trying to, and studios are trying to increase wages, but then obviously then has a knock-on effect. Productions just become way more expensive, and it's a big problem, I think.
Are they not under any contract and they just walk out?
I don't know.
But it's like chefs. If you're in demand, I mean, I've heard stories around here where literally chefs have walked out and taken their whole staff with them because they're fed up with the management of the pub, and they do it. They don't give them any notice. They leave it right to the wire and walk out, and so the pub.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Well, I'm surprised that a crew can just walk out.
I know.
Surely there must be some kind of legal binding before they actually embark on doing anything. But obviously that's not the case. That's ridiculous.
Well, I guess if they've got the power, it's
ridiculous. Carrying on conversation with your guest.
With Merritt Gosnell, we're talking about all things film and TV business. And Chris has just reminded me that you had a spell in the industry.
Well, I spelled at BBC. I worked there for quite a long time. I worked at Ealing Studios. I used to live just up the road.
Oh, okay.
So I went in there and worked in the film library to begin with, and I was a trainee assistant film editor.
And how did you like that? No,
not my thing really. I'm stuck in a cutting room, dark dungeon type place.
Yeah.
Just doing what you're telling, splicing stuff together using Steinbeck machines. Remember those? Steinbecks?
Oh wow, yeah.
Okay, and obviously syncing up the voice with the actual, the
so
actual soundtrack.
Quite repetitive.
Yeah. Not, I think I'd have got a good grounding and probably would have hopefully made it as a film editor, but I didn't really seek that, and then I went into graphic design and moved on to something else. But I mean, BBC was great to work for. Thoroughly enjoyed Ealing Studios, and I don't think they produce anything or make anything there anymore. I think it's part of the BBC, but some good times.
So editing today, I mean, anybody with a
completely
computer
different now, I should think.
Is what you can do at home now is just completely democratised and revolutionised. I mean, when I left New York, I never thought I'd be involved in film again, and now I do stuff every week on my phone, my YouTube channel, and in a way, that's great, isn't it? But it means that there's how do you raise above that? How do you,
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's where you can look at it as a blessing and a curse, obviously, with the rise of social media and things like that, and YouTube as well. I mean, anyone can get a YouTube tutorial now and learn how to do stuff. So there's a lot more competition because there's a lot more opportunities. So it is difficult to stand out, and you do need to surround yourself with good people. And I think just learn as many skills as you can. I mean, that was one good thing about lockdown for me, was that it forced me to learn things like editing, which I'd been putting off for some time, always had an excuse. But like you say, I mean, DaVinci Resolve, for example, which is generally the kind of industry standard editing software, you can get a free trial of that indefinitely, and it includes pretty much all the features, and it's very easy for beginners. I mean, I'm pretty good on it now, and I only started it like a couple years ago, and it's very easy to use, so anyone can do it, and even kids at work are always showing me stuff like, this new iMovie editing thing, and it's kind of lost on me a little bit, but anyone can do it now, anyone with a phone.
But I think what it boils down to is content. I think it's the story. I don't care how glitzy, how well edited it, if you're not telling a good story, it doesn't matter. And if you've got a good story, it doesn't matter how low the production values are, frankly.
No, that's true.
In my humble opinion.
No, I agree, absolutely. I've seen short films with quite shoddy sound design, and you can tell they were made on a very low budget, often the director filming it themselves. But like you say, the script at heart is excellent. And even in local film festivals in the West Berkshire area, I've seen some films that kind of blow you away, because you look, first impression, you're like, this looks a bit studenty or whatever, but they're really good stories.
If it grips you, you don't notice that stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
So you've talked about your teaching. Tell us about your role as a teacher now as well.
So that actually started while I was still at university. There's Pauline Quirk, who are actress, obviously most people know from Birds of a Feather. I think back in 2007, I think it was, she started her own Performing Arts Academy. I think they now have 200 branches across the UK and some in Spain for some reason. And they're quite unique in the sense they kind of stand out from other performing arts academies in that they do film and TV as well. So that's been running for many years. And while I was at uni, it was quite popular. A few students were working at the PQA in Eastleigh. That was our closest one. And I didn't really know what it was at that point. I just heard a lot of people, we go up PQA on Saturdays and we teach kids filmmaking. I was like, that sounds cool. And I found it out quite late on. So this was kind of June 2019. I was going to graduate in a month. So I was sort of looking ahead, I found what was local to me, and there's one in Reading. So I got the job there, and I've been working there ever since, teaching anything filmmaking to kids 6 to 18, which is as chaotic as it sounds.
I'm sure it is.
But it was a big learning curve for me as well, because, I think sometimes teaching is the way you learn as well. If you can teach other people to do it, you can teach yourself, and it's a lot of fun.
This is where you obviously get paid as a teacher, so this is a way for you to use your skills to earn a living. So that's a Saturday job alongside my commercial stuff in the week, and I've been doing it a while.
So you teach on a Saturday?
So Saturday school, so parents sort of pay monthly, and they send their kids sort of out of hours, school hours, so extracurricular. But you do get a mixed bunch, because for some kids it's obviously like a society or a club, but then a lot of our kids do actually want to go into the industry. So I'm not involved with this, but in London we have our kind of sister company called Quirky Kids, and they're a talent agency. Great name. So a lot of the kids can sign up to that, and then that puts them on commercials and films and things like that. And some of them have been on some quite big stuff, so some of them are very industry minded. They do want to go into the industry, and occasionally you will see it on TV where I'm like, oh, that kid looks familiar, and you look up and they're from a PQA academy somewhere else. So that's always quite nice to see.
So how do you get your commercial work, and does it tend to be in London, or how far do you
always
have to
London? Usually. There was one I had recently in East Berkshire, which was nice, because all the London crew were moaning there to come up the M25 to here, and I was like, actually, for once, it's very nice for me. It was only 40 minutes. It's mainly just, the story of how I actually landed my first commercial was a bit random, and that's why I give the advice to people, like, don't be afraid to branch out, because sometimes it is as crazy as you know someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone in film, and you think, oh, it's a bit silly of me to ask, it's a bit inappropriate, but just do it, because it leads somewhere. That's kind of what happened with me. It was a friend's dad, where I live in Fatcham, sold a car to a commercials director in Kingsclear. So we started speaking, and he's been very helpful with me. You know, he's mentored me a lot, and he started getting me on his sets, and I still work with him now, and this was a couple of years ago. So that is one way to get your foot in the door. Also, just finding contact details online of production managers, first assistant directors, other runners as well. I mean, there's an abundance of Facebook pages and things like that out there.
Can you think of any off the top of your head?
The main one I think a lot of people start on is, I think it's literally called People in TV Runners. That's quite a big one. That's actually run by a lot of production managers in TV mainly. But also what I would suggest as well, because CV building's a very big skill in filmmaking, and it certainly hit me by surprise. I mean, the way we picture a conventional CV for a job is extremely different in film and TV. It's completely minimalist. People will scan through it. It needs to be one page, which is crazy, but it's doable. I would actually recommend people who are trying to get in film, as well as going on these Facebook pages and sort of listening to their advice and looking at their CV templates, etc., go on sites like Callbox and Red, which are what you call diary services in the industry. So like an agency, not an agency. You sign up with them, they get you work. But if you actually go on there, you can do this as a member of the public, look at the runners on there and look at their CVs, how they're formatted, how they're laid out, and then copy that, because then when you send that off speculatively to different companies and stuff, they can already see you've done your research.
So basically they just want a list of productions that
it's very minimalist. It's literally sometimes they might like a short 2-sentence bio about yourself, like who I am, what I'm doing, where I want to go, then all your credits, or if you haven't got credits, if you're starting out, relevant experience, transferable skills, so bar work as a runner, you know, handling petty cash, talking to difficult people, anything really, any kind of customer service, hospitality experience, warehousing as well, kind of being on the floor, you know, equipment, etc. So often that, and obviously over time you'll get rid of that and just have credits. And then at the bottom, just kind of like, it seems a bit harsh because you're like, I've studied 3 years at uni, and it's a footnote, but it is. You put your education, you know, so studied film and history at the University of Southampton. And then if you do have any room left, it can't hurt to just put, like, I mean, the argument is when you're applying as a runner, people aren't really interested if you have camera experience, but I personally don't think it can't hurt if you just put there, you know, I have camera experience with this model, this model, this model. I have edited on DaVinci Resolve Intermediate. And it's just, people can take it or leave it, but that's very much how the CV is constructed. It's very minimalist. People will look at it, scan it one page, and then throw it away or act on it, really.
So what is your sort of weekly job in the commercials? So presumably it's keeping you busy all the time. You always got something. What do you actually do? What is that? So you're there on set, if I can call it that, and sort of, I don't know, 7 in the morning until 7 at night.
Yeah,
what is your actual role throughout the day?
So I'm what would be called a floor runner. It gets confusing because there's different types of runners as well. That's a whole lot of other thing. So floor runner, basically, you're part of the AD department. So I work for the first assistant director. It gets different because on film you have 3 ADs. So you'll have one who, like I said earlier, sort of is the right-hand man of the director, but then you have the second AD, who does actually a lot of admin, behind the scenes, and you have the third AD who works with supporting artists, so extras. But on commercials you generally tend to only have 1 or 2, so I work in that department, and it can be anything from 1 runner to 5. It depends what the production needs and how much they're willing to pay. So you're kind of, I mean, that's why it's a great starting out role, because you kind of do a bit of everything, you know.
You're sent on errands.
You do a lot of errands, yeah. You kind of act as you do lock off, which is sort of stopping members of the public come on set, so you're kind of like security. You help with catering. That's fun. It's a lot of the unglamorous jobs, to be fair, but it's a good starting point. But it is a good chance, especially commercials, like I said, very friendly crowd, to just kind of network and get in different departments. You always, whether you mean to or not, I always end up helping the grips, who they're basically responsible for setting up all the equipment that the camera goes on top of. So if people have seen pictures, it kind of looks like a train track, the dolly and track, cranes, things like that. So you can help people like that. art department as well. They always need help moving stuff around, and it depends. Some people can be quite departmental and will appreciate the offer but tell you, no, we'll stick to our own people. But some people welcome that, so it is a good chance, because you're in a role, even though it is very fast paced and you do have to be quite switched on, you haven't got too much responsibility, so you can really watch and absorb and decide which department you want to go into. So I think most people do start as runners, and then they either progress in the AD department and eventually become a first AD. Either they might do that while also making their own films on the side and start pitching that to companies and then get signed on as a director, or they might decide, I want to be a makeup assistant, so then they go into that department. So there's loads of opportunities that you can lead to, definitely.
Right. And do you have walkie-talkies?
We do, yeah. Radio is another responsibility. Getting those back at the end of the day is fun, because people have a tendency, accidentally I'm sure, to just walk off with radios, which you do get a bit of a slap on the wrist for that. But yeah, radios, it's always communicating by radio. So again, that's another thing you kind of pick up on set, the kind of lingo. It's very military, different codes for different things. And I still find myself today, someone says something like, what's that mean? But yeah, no, it's all fun.
Get me a coffee.
It is a bit. And you can always tell when someone's green is because, I'm just going for a wee, and it's like, generally the code for that is, I'm just going 10-1 or 10-2. So it's just these little things, you kind of pick up the lingo. I mean, actually, one thing I would recommend, and this was quite helpful for me, was something called the Floor Runners Boot Camp, which is basically a one-day training course. I think they do it at Black Island Studios, which is quite a big studio. It's probably the biggest commercial production studios in London. And it's all run by first ADs who have worked in commercials or film or both. And that kind of teaches you everything you need to know. Like they sort of run you through practically the duties you have to do on set, but they also teach you the less fun but obviously very important side of things like tax returns and managing your finances and all of that, because that's something...
How to work as a freelancer.
Exactly, yeah. That's, stuff kind of take for granted but it's very necessary. And again, it's great having courses like that, because that generation of filmmakers weren't taught that stuff. They kind of had to pick it up. So, that's a course I still think runs today as well, so I'd recommend people do that. It's a little bit more expensive. It's about £200, I think it was. But it was really helpful, because when I came on set, I straight away, and they give you like a booklet at the end with pages and pages of the walkie-talkie lingo. So it becomes like your runner Bible. So straight away you turn up on set, you're like, okay, I know what this person's on about. It's like DFI, which is different frickin' idea, except the frickin's obviously something else. But at first you're kind of like, what's DFI?
A bit like JFI.
Yeah.
It could just be anything. It'd be like, could you get this? Oh no, DFI. And if you don't know what that means, you might just go ahead and get that. They're like, no, I said DFI. It's just to speed things up, because it's very fast paced. So people use codes for everything.
God.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, which if it's 6 a.m, you're just kind of like, can't we just talk?
But it's a way of screening people, I suppose.
Absolutely.
To see how keen they are to.
It's fascinating stuff.
Join the team.
Fascinating stuff.
So I think it was during the track you mentioned that you're to kind of make a career as a writer or director, you need to make some short films, have a portfolio, and then you can get an agent. Is that or?
Yeah, I mean that's like I was telling you off the air. It's a weird one, because it's not clear-cut route into this industry. There's people come at it from many different angles. That's why I always love speaking to people, hear their story. It can be something really random or quite linear. So I think people have this misconception that if you work in the AD department and spend years climbing the ranks, you will graduate to director one day.
It's completely different.
It's not how it works. You'll become a first AD, which is fine, but then if you want to become a director, you do have to be making your own stuff on the side and building a portfolio. So for example, with commercials, you might shoot like 5 decent commercials that you can promote, and then kind of pitch that to commercials companies, and then they decide if they want to sign you on. Same way with film. A lot of people I know, they will make a couple decent short films that are quite good production value, get recognised in some, top festivals in London. Then they can get an agent, and then that helps you pitch to TV companies and film companies, because often it is very difficult to what's called unsolicited pitch. If I for example, sent my script to, I don't know, Tiger Aspect, who have done a lot of big things, they're just saying, no, sorry, we don't take stuff from members of the public, often you will go through them via an agent. And then, especially in TV, then you'll climb up to major broadcasters, and it's a bit of a spider's web. But yeah, there's many ways you can come out of it, but I think ultimately doing your own thing is important.
Cool, thank you. Well, we're nearly just out of time. Just I wanted to recap some of the useful resources you've mentioned this morning. So the Facebook group for runners, I've got People in TV runners with 85,000 members.
Yeah,
Does
that's
that
the
sound
one.
it? Can anyone join that group? Is it quite easy
absolutely.
to join?
Yeah. I think just answer a couple of questions, but anyone can join because it's aimed purely at new people.
Okay. And then we talked about screen skills, and probably just Googling, courses and workshops. And
it is a lot of desk-based detective work, unfortunately. Yeah, I think that's what hit me when I came out of uni. It's just kind of, you do have to just do a lot of research and get to know it and go to these courses and meet people, and you pick it up. Obviously, it's harder for people these days with COVID, but hopefully, fingers crossed, that's calming down now, so there's more opportunities.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Mirik, for coming in.
It's really interesting stuff.
No,
Good luck. Keep us posted.